Now in the previous turn we had done differences between self and cross-pollination, their advantages and disadvantages. We studied that self-pollination is important whenever we want to preserve the parental characters, whereas cross-pollination is needed when mixing of characters is needed, so that offsprings produced are healthier and they show variation and contribute to the evolution. So overall, nature wants evolution to occur, it wants progress to occur. So nature always favors cross-pollination, and for that it shows contrivances or adaptations in favor of cross-pollination. The first adaptation is unisexuality. Now it is quite understandable that if the flower is unisexual, that is either staminate or pistillate, it can only undergo cross-pollination. So, and usually we have the plants which are separately male or female. We had studied this, and they are bearing completely like male flowers or only female flowers. In such a case, it would favor cross-pollination. The second adaptation is dichogamy. Dicho means two different and gamy means maturation. Two different timings of maturation are there of androecium and gynoecium. That means the flower might be bisexual, but androecium and gynoecium both are present, but it shows different times of maturation of androecium and gynoecium. If androecium is mature first and gynoecium is still not ready, stigma is still not ready to receive the pollen, such a condition is called protandry. Proto means first and andry means androecium. So first androecium is ready or mature. The second condition is protogyny, first gynoecium. In this case, the stigma of the flower is ready to receive the pollen, but the anthers are still not mature. In such a case, the only option left is some other pollen from another flower on another plant comes and lands on the stigma, and thus favoring cross-pollination. So first one was unisexuality, second is dichogamy, that means different times of maturation of androecium and gynoecium, which is of two kinds, protandry and protogyny. Third one is self-sterility, that means sterile for itself. Sterility means incapable of reproduction. So the flower is sterile for itself, meaning that if pollen of that flower or another flower on the same plant lands on the stigma, it will not germinate. But if that pollen lands on the stigma of another flower on another plant, it will germinate. Such a condition also favors cross-pollination. Examples are given in every case. Next is hercogamy. Hercos means a barrier. So we find in some flowers like pansy that there is a hood which is covering the stigma. Now this hood which covers the stigma prevents the landing of the pollen on that stigma, the pollen of the same flower. So it acts as a mechanical barrier, and this hood is partially open from the other side so that pollen from another flower on another plant can land there. So this is known as hercogamy. Hercos means mechanical barrier and gamy means in reproduction. Next is heterostyly. Hetero means different and styly, lengths of styles. Now here you can see there are two conditions in this. Here the style is longer and stigma is away from the anther lobes. Filaments are shorter, relatively style is longer. Or the other condition in which filament is long, anthers are here and style is so short that stigma is deep inside. So this condition also favors cross-pollination. Hetero means different, styly, lengths of style. Either style is very long and it is going above the level of the anther only, or style is very short, it is much below the level of anther. So when these anthers are ready, they rupture, the pollen grain which is liberated will go to another flower rather than pollinate the same flower. So these are the contrivances which favor cross-pollination: unisexuality, dichogamy, self-sterility, hercogamy and heterostyly. And there is only one contrivance in your course which favors self-pollination, which was mentioned on the previous page, and that is cleistogamy. Cleisto means closed. If the flower will remain closed, even if the flower is bisexual, the only option left for the flower is self-pollination. So some underground flowers of Commelina, in oxalis, some rare species of pansies, in these cases what happens? The flower remains closed. In Commelina, flower is underground only and remains closed. When a flower will remain closed, self-pollination is the only option left. So very few adaptations are there for self-pollination, but a lot of them are for cross-pollination. Reason that nature is favoring cross-pollination because it wants variation, it wants evolution to occur. Coming next to the agents of cross-pollination. Cross-pollination occurs by different agents like insect, wind or water, and according to that the flowers have developed different kinds of adaptations. The first kind is insect pollinated flower, or we call it entomophilous flower. Entomophily means pollination by insects and entomophilous means insect pollinated flowers. Such flowers are brightly colored, produce nectar or scent. They are quite large, conspicuous to attract insects, and their pollen grains are sticky in nature, and so is the stigma, so that the pollen grain sticks to the body of the insect and the sticky stigma is easily able to trap that sticky pollen. In this kind of pollination, there is less wastage of pollen grain, but yes, it is uneconomical from the point of view that the flower has to spend a lot of energy in looking large, brightly colored, producing nectar or scent, etc. And if insect pollinated flowers are small in size by chance, then they cluster together and form an inflorescence. What we had studied earlier, they form clusters together to attract the insect. Next is the wind pollinated or the anemophilous flowers. Anemophilous means pollinated by wind. Remember, it has got no connection with animals. Anemos here means wind. So they are pollinated by wind. Unlike the entomophilous flowers, these flowers are small. They are dull in color, not brightly colored, and do not produce nectar or scent. So overall, this is more economical if we talk of the flower. It doesn't have to spend its energy in looking bright or colorful or producing nectar or scent. But at the same time, there is lot of wastage of pollen because large amount of pollen needs to be produced. It is carried by wind and on the way it is wasted. The pollen grains in wind pollinated flowers are dry and light so that they are easily carried by the wind. The stigma is feathery and style is long, so that feathery stigma hangs out of the flower so that easily the pollen grain which is being blown away by the wind is caught by it. Then the anthers are very loosely attached to the filament. This kind of anthers are called versatile, so that slightest movement of the wind can move them. So often you are given these features and you are asked, is it a feature of entomophilous or anemophilous flower, and what is its significance? So if feathery stigma is given, it's a feature of anemophilous flower, and significance is it hangs out of the flower so that it can easily trap the pollen. Likewise, why do anemophilous flowers have light and dry pollen? In that case, you write so that it can easily be carried by wind. So there is a reason why they needn't produce all this, because wind is not having any sense organs, or it's not a living creature. There is no need for the flower to invest its energy in all this. The third one is water pollinated or hydrophilous flowers. Now hydrophilous flowers of course are pollinated by water. Here also pollen grains are produced in large numbers like the anemophilous flowers. In some plants the pollen grains have specific gravity equal to that of water, so they are floating on the surface of water. And in Vallisneria, like you had studied before also, the entire male flower gets detached and floats on the surface of water. This is the female flower. The female flower stalk or the pedicel is like a coiled spring. This spring uncoils, this flower comes on the surface. The male plant is separate, the male flowers are in an inflorescence, They are all set free. They are very light. They float on the surface of water. Surround this female flower. Pollen is transferred from the male to the female flower. The moment fertilization is complete, this spring coils up again. This flower is pulled down under water and it would develop into a fruit. So everything is very organized and systematic. So either pollen is light and it floats, or the entire male flower floats in case of hydrophilous flowers. Then we have ornithophily or ornithophilous flowers. Ornitho means birds. So different agents, different names. Ornithophily, pollination by birds. Bignonia and canna are examples. Elephophily, pollination by elephants. The largest flower, Rafflesia, is the example of elephophily. This flower is so large that elephant steps on it. On its feet, the pollen grains stick, and then the elephant walks away and the pollen lands on the stigma of another Rafflesia flower. This is brought about at ground level only and brought about by elephants. So when we use the word phily at the end, that means type of pollination. Entomophily, ornithophily, elephophily. When LOUS, it means kind of flower.